What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Redriveraviation. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day today. And today we have the second episode of the Pilot Life series for you guys. I really hope you guys are excited for today's video. I've been so excited to make this. It's been months in the making of getting this happening, but I'm so excited that we are finally here today, everybody. And I'm super excited to dive into today's video. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day today. Absolutely epic Pilot Life video in store for you guys today. The debut of something brand new, and I really hope you guys are excited for it. Due to some of the clips and content in these upcoming videos, I will have to make some disclaimers here, so that's what we're going to do first, and then we're going to be going into the full details of episode 2 of the Pilot Life. Again, really hope you guys are excited for it, and with all that being said, let's get all those remarks and everything that we need to taken out of the way. So at the beginning of the video, you did see a message there. That was to confirm that in this video, you will be seeing clips from me and my flight instructor flying an aircraft, or aircrafts, I should say, with GoPro footage. That was approved by the flight company that I have, so that is fully approved. So yes, that is approved. Everything there is good. Flight instructor was good on it, so all of that is fully approved. So before any questions come out, this has been approved to be done. So there we have it with that. Really excited for today's video, everybody. It's going to be absolutely awesome. And again, if I'm a little all over the place, I apologize. There's a lot that goes into this. This is my first time doing something like this as well, but that doesn't mean that I'm not super excited to share this with you guys. This is going to be absolutely awesome. I really hope that you guys take this as inspirational and adviceful. And once again, as the message said, this is not to be taken as any flight instruction whatsoever. This is more so for entertainment, advice. Everybody does things differently, and that's kind of where I want to start this video. Is everybody's training is slightly different in flight training. We'll talk about the intro more in a moment, like, the full intro to what we're doing here. But just kind of for the disclaimer wise, this is not meant to be took as any flight instruction or how you do stuff, that sort of thing. This is simply from my perspective, how we've been doing things, how things work on our side of the spectrum, kind of what we're doing. So thank you guys for understanding. I really appreciate it. Been so excited for this, everybody, and we have a lot to talk about. I honestly do not know how long this video is going to be. It could very easily be an hour, but there's a lot. This is months worth of content that we're going to talk about in today's video, and then we'll have a more fluid system going into it. So with all that being said, everybody, here we go with the Pilot Life episode 2. Man, I've been so excited for this, everybody. Lots of context that goes into how this has happened. So if you missed the first episode, definitely check that out. Came out in late December. That is a critical episode to get you caught up to speed, because some of the stuff that I covered in that video, we're not going to go over again, because we're going to be using it for that, for the crying out loud, if you will. So I'm really excited for this. Again, guys, if I'm a little all over the place, I apologize. First time doing something like this, and there's a lot that goes into this, but there's a lot of great material in here. Again, really hope you guys are excited for it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. Happy to answer them. And with all that being said, everybody, we're going to get started. So the place that we're going to start is where we left off from episode 1, because there was many snippets of me talking there about what future content in this series was going to be, because at the time I was unsure of what was going to happen. Turns out I was very surprised by what ended up happening. I was not expecting it, to be quite honest, but for the sake of my training and helping everybody, or not like helping, but helping myself and everything that we're doing here, it turned out to work really well, so I'm really excited for it. So here we go. Once again, just the final time I'm going to say this. This is not to be taken as any flight instruction or anything like that. This is simply advice, how I've been doing it, entertainment, whatever you want to call it. So the message at the beginning was much more formal than what I was able to put that into words, but I think you guys understand what I'm getting at. So here we go. So where we left off from episode 1, of course, I talked about everything that we got going on with all the materials, our first couple flights, that sort of thing, in my flight training journey. I started back in early December with my flight training journey for some additional context. Now, here's what happened. So obviously, as I said in that video, I was not sure about what the future content was going to be, simply due to the fact of how the format works. So obviously, when you're flying an airplane, it's a very focus-based system. You can't just pull out your phone or a camcorder, that sort of thing, just start filming. It's not really how it works. It's not like vlogging or anything like that. Kind of like driving a car, but times 15, if you will. So there's a lot that goes into that, and I was really trying to grasp, I want to share this experience with you guys, but how was I going to be able to do it? So out of curiosity, because as you guys see on the internet, YouTube, everywhere, there is a lot, and I mean a lot of GoPro footage from airplanes. Whether it's on the wing, in the cockpit, wherever, there is a lot of it, and there's no other way to put it. There's a ton of footage. So out of curiosity, I asked my flight instructor, the logistics of that and kind of what his opinion was on that. So I asked him what he thought about it, and he said that for training purposes, it would be beneficial to have a GoPro. So as you guys know, I've never had a GoPro before. I've really wanted one, and this was the perfect time to get one. So he said that he thought it would be an excellent idea to get a GoPro for training purposes. And I completely agreed with him. Not only can I use it for this, but I can also use it for, everything that we're doing in terms of other content, that sort of thing. And just in general, I mean, it's a GoPro. You can do anything with it. So I was really excited to get the GoPro because, well, sorry, I've kind of went a little fast there. But the reason that the GoPro matters here is because this is the way that I'm going to be able to share pilot life content with you guys. Because obviously, like I said, it's pretty hard to pull out your phone and film. That's not really a thing that nobody wants to do. I mean, you can look at it in the farm. It's more of like a, they use the terminology of like a, misconduct behavior. It's something along the lines of that, and we don't want to be breaking any guidelines by any means. So that's why this is fully approved, like I was saying. So to share this content with you guys, that was the other reason that I incorporated to me getting the GoPro, mainly strictly for training purposes for my own behalf, so I can watch back, learn from it, improve from it, but also a little factor of, hey, I could also share this with you guys. So we talked about the logistics of what that could be, and he said that it was all good with him in the format that I'm going to present it for you guys. So very excited for this. It's going to be absolutely awesome. I'm super, super excited. So what we're going to be doing here in episode 2 for you guys today is, first off, or kind of to finish off that conversation about the GoPro, I'm really, really fortunate that I'm able to do this. Not everywhere approves of this. Not everywhere would even let this happen. So I'm very fortunate to be in the position I am to do this for you guys. And I just can't give a huge enough thanks to everybody that's made this possible once again, because most of the time this is not doable whatsoever. And in the future, we're going to talk about that as well. It probably won't be either. But we have our opportunity now. I'm not going to let it slip. I'm really excited for it. It's going to be awesome. And like I said, thank you guys so much. So here we go. So that was the GoPro note that I wanted to make to you guys. And also just one more time, I know I said that, but it was also on my outline, is this isn't to be taken as flight instruction purposes. This is simply for advice, entertainment, that sort of thing. So here we go. So what I'm going to do here in episode 2 is, since we're fairly behind in where I am at training since I've got the GoPro, because logistically speaking, if I'm going to be able to share this with you guys, it's either going to be through flight simulation, so I can show you guys what we're doing in terms of flights and that sort of thing, and then over to, or either GoPro, because that's pretty much the only way that you can realistically, safely do this. So since I've got the GoPro, that obviously opens a huge opportunity window to be able to do Pilot Life series content in a real way, if you will. So here's what I plan to do. Today in episode 2, like I said, it's going to be longer because that first 10 minutes or 8 minutes, whatever it was, took a minute. But in this first episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this format and see what you guys think of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chronologically walk you guys through where we are in training till I got the GoPro, which was in early February. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys through my first 7 flights, some ground information, and kind of just the logistics of how the whole pilot life works in general for a student pilot beginning. So what I'm going to do is obviously going to take some clips from what we already have, because I've used it several times and it's worked super well. You guys will see it. It's absolutely awesome. I'm going to take some clips. I'm going to show you guys what we've been doing. The good news about this stage of flight is a lot of this stuff, especially for us aviation enthusiasts, is very basic. I mean, we're talking about straight level flight, climbs and descents, turns to headings, that sort of thing. Bunch of this stuff is super easy to grasp, and I mean, we've seen it, we've all done it in flight simulators probably at some point, and real life maybe even too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you guys through the beginning process of my pilot journey, if you will. And then in episode 3, what I plan to do as of right now is we're going to walk through a full flight to show you guys how everything works. And then what we're going to do is kind of go back to the format we have today, but we're going to go a little bit more in detail about such, because a lot of these components end up building on each other over time, because these are the fundamentals. So this episode 2 is a perfect time to encompass the basics and kind of show you guys what's going on. And then as we proceed into full flights, or, you know, I don't want to use terminology full flight, but, you know, once we start working into more things, when we show more takeoff, landings, communications, that sort of thing, then we'll be kind of prepared to go, and you guys will kind of see how it all builds on each other. So there's a lot to this, lots of layers, lots of context. I hope you guys are excited for it. If you have any advice or comments about the feedback, please let me know in the comment section. But again, here in episode 2, there's not going to be as much footage, because we're going to walk through the key highlights of what we did in those first 7 flights. I unfortunately don't have footage from any of those, so there's nothing I can really show. But I mean, flying the airplane, you can look at it from 2 ways. You can look at it from the simplistic side, in terms of, you know, we've already seen a takeoff and landing before, or you can look at it from step by step, going from pre-flight to briefing to starting the aircraft, taxiing the aircraft, taking off, and etc. The list goes on. But what I'm going to do is put this into a simplistic format for this episode, like I said, simply because that's what we have. I don't have full flights, or I would show you. And in episode 3, we'll walk a little bit more in depth about how things are actually done once we have these fundamentals down. I think this format's going to work very well, so I hope you guys are excited for it. So here we go, everybody. We're going to begin. Really hope you guys are excited for this. And we're going to begin with the first ground lesson that was in late November. So I kind of talked about this in the first episode, but we're going to go just a touch more in depth this time, just to kind of walk you guys through it. So obviously, the flight center, I called them, got in the queue, and then obviously got, if you want to use terminology, accepted, you can, but obviously began the process. So what the first thing we did was me and my flight instructor did a Zoom, and we came to this website. Let me pull it up for you guys. So this is the website that you come to get your application going for your pilot's license and all that fun stuff. This is the Integrated Airman Certificate and Rating Application, or the ICCRA. You make an account on here and go through all your logistics and put that in here for them to accept. And then obviously once you get accepted, you'll have your pilot's license. Mine took a couple months to come in, which was kind of surprising. I think they may be a little bit backed up, but yes, this is where you start. This is where you get it done. There's not too much to this. This is kind of like filling out any application. So whatever the case may be, college, you know, any sort of program, that sort of thing. This is kind of a similar process just for the Federal Aviation Administration, or we'll be referring to them all the time as the FAA, as you guys may know them. So that's kind of the system there, pretty simple. And then in lesson 1, we also went through the full logistics of kind of a little bit of aviation history, kind of how airplanes work, that sort of thing. I don't want to use terminology brief, but it was fairly in depth about the full process of that and kind of just different things in general, which was nice. So we went into that all in the first lesson, and that's kind of what happened through the first lesson. Again, fairly basic, getting that introduction going. It was fun. I enjoyed it. That was pretty awesome. So that is what we did in the first ground lesson. Then in the first flight lesson, here we go, boys. This is where it's going to start to get fun. It's going to be awesome. So again, let me know what you guys think about this format. I think it's going to work really well. I hope you guys are excited for it once again, of course. But this is how it happens. So here we go. So my first flight was my discovery flight, of course. It was absolutely awesome. Talked about it a little bit more in detail in episode 1, but we're going to go kind of through the basics of that. So in our first flight, we did the discovery flight, of course. Went through the full logistics and kind of started getting the feel for the airplane. It doesn't happen during one flight, but that was kind of the beginning of that process, if you will. So that's what happened there. And then the only flight maneuver that was substantial, if you want to use that word, but the only flight maneuver that I'm going to show you guys for this first one, and this is just everyday flight, is terrain level flight. Very simple. So terrain level flight, as I'm going to show you guys in this clip, this is the first time I'm going to be showing a clip. I hope you guys are excited for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my webcam in the corner and talk over it and kind of show you guys what the process is. So here we go. Alrighty guys, so here it is. I'm just gonna kind of talk you guys through the setup real quick. So here's the GoPro, by the way. I probably should have shown this. This is the GoPro Hero 9. I decided to go for this one because its chip is different from the Hero 10, and I think its battery life is a little bit better, and it's done really well for me in the cockpit. I was kind of surprised how well it's done, and I'll talk about this more in detail later, but we'll definitely be using this. So I ended up getting this mount. We had many discussions about what kind of mount we wanted. So we're gonna be talking about this more in detail here in a little bit because we ended up moving over to the Piper Tomahawk. But the Tomahawk, as you'll see in this frame, has 2 rods. And what we did was we got this jaw mount so we can open it and clamp it right there to one of the rods. And that worked really well. It's I mean, it moves a little bit, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with it, so I'm not complaining. But here it is. This is the jaw mount from GoPro. Link, I'll put it in the description if I remember. Absolutely awesome mount, super happy with it. But here's the Hero 10 Hero 9, pardon me, as well. GoPros are awesome, they are awesome. So we'll be seeing this in 1080-60. I thought that 1080-60 was pretty good for what we're doing here. So here we go. Here's the cockpit of the Tomahawk. Now, this was back when we were in the Warrior, of course, and I'm sure you guys kind of know what the Warrior looks like. We'll see an X-Plane clip of it here in a little bit as well. But as you guys can see, we have all of the panels and everything, or I'm sorry, all the gauges and all that fun stuff. And again, we're going to walk through this through ground lessons and that sort of thing in the content. But you guys have seen what an airplane looks like before. But here's kind of the format of what we have right here. So I'm on the left, of course, my flight instructor's on the right. And this is just simple, straight and level flight right here. So here's what it is. So as you can see, very simple. Obviously, every circumstance is going to be different between wind, every aerodynamic forces, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot to it. You will see him move, and he's explaining to a maneuver we previously did. But this simple straight and level flight, keeping a consistent altitude, consistent attitude indicator right there. Airspeed, yes, pretty much. I mean, this is just simple straight and level flight. And we'll also see this through textbook as well. But again, very simple. Everybody I may have even done this at this point, but straight level flight, really cool, not a ton to it. And again, guys, when we dive into more advanced things, we'll watch more than just what that was. There wasn't a ton to that, but straight level flight, obviously just hold it, and it's just like cruising essentially, if you will. So that's straight level flight, very simple, and that's what I did on my first flight. That was the only thing I did, just straight level flight. That wasn't the first time I've done straight level flight, believe it or not. Back several years ago, actually, back when I was probably I was young. Let's say that I was very young. I have some relatives that actually do some flight companies and such. One has a plane to his own, one has a company, but they had some small aircraft that they let me do some straight and level flight on. So, but it's been a long time, so that was a bunch of fun, and I really enjoyed that. So, and then we did straight and level flight. We did come to my local airport, which is also cool, as I mentioned in the previous video. I didn't do any takeoffs and landings or anything. That is coming up, though. That is coming up, so that's exciting, though. But yeah, it was absolutely awesome, and again, I really enjoyed it. So phenomenal process right there. Again, very basic, and we'll be diving more into that. It'll be a little bit more engaging, if you will, once we get into the latter stages. But yes, again, fairly simple flight, but it was a bunch of fun, and getting in the air for the first time in the Warrior was a bunch of fun, and I really enjoyed it. So that was absolutely awesome. Proceeding into our second flight, which was the next thing we did, sorry. This flight was another Warrior flight. I think it was a 1.1 flight. The first one was a 1.3. But again, this is kind of, everything just builds on each other. You'll notice that a lot of these maneuvers, if you would like to call them that, they really become maneuvers, as we'll see in episode 3. But a lot of these things that we're seeing here, these kind of just build on each other. And obviously it's everyday flights, so practice makes perfect. So that's why you'll see repeats of multiple things that we've done previously, especially depending on one's aviator's ability to make these maneuvers happen. And again, practice makes perfect. Everybody has a different learning rate. So if you notice that my flight my process is either faster or slower than anybody's, that's kind of why. But in the second flight, what we did is more straight and level flight, and we also introduced turns to headings. Now, turns to heading, again, another very simple topic, but obviously we're going to show what that's all about. So let me pull this up for you guys. Okay, so this is climbing out of takeoff out of Stillwater, and what we did was we were doing a northwest bound departure. So what we did is we ended up turning northwest. So as you can see here, getting ready for it. Fairly simple. This one was also a climbing one, so it's not technically a turn to a heading, I guess, if you will. A turn to the heading is level, but as you guys can see right here, we're climbing, obviously, but this is a simple turn to a heading. Now, you obviously have different degree banks as well. I should talk about that. You have multiple increments, so you have, I think, 4 lines on your attitude indicator. You have the first one, which is 10 degrees, the second one, which is 20 degrees, the third one is 30 degrees, and the fourth one is 60 degrees, which no, don't even go close to that, at least through my training in this stage. But what we did is different turns to headings with different attitude settings, or I'm sorry, different bank angles. So 10 degrees, pretty light, there's not too much to that. 20, or whatever you want to call it. 20 degrees is a decent amount, kind of like a casual turn, if you will, if you want to call it that. I kind of like the 20 degrees. 30 degrees where it starts to get pretty substantial and you turn fairly fast. And then we'll talk more about 45 degree steep turns in a little bit at a later time, not in this video, but yes. And then that was just a simple turn to heading right there. So that worked really well. Again, that one was a climbing one. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But again, these are fairly basic topics, but that was a simple turn, just imagine it level. Honestly, between the maneuvers and such, I didn't really have a great example of a turn from these recent flights, but that was a pretty solid one, so I thought I'd show you guys that one. So looking good there on that one. So again, our second flight was more straight and level flight like I previously showed you guys. Then we did a bunch of different increment turns to headings, which again, 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, that sort of thing. So that was good. It's kind of a feel for it too, and you also have to use a little bit of rudder to keep your turn coordinator level. So again, there's a lot to that. And then as needed, you may have to use airspeed, and we'll talk about that more through ground lessons as well. So speaking of which, that's going to take us to our first ground lesson, if you want to call it that, in this video. Alrighty guys, so what we have up here is my phone on a DIY tripod so I can get you guys a cool overhead perspective of what we're doing here. So here is the Airplane Flying Handbook. We also have the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge right here as well that we'll be using. But these are the two big textbooks that I showed you guys in episode 1 that we use for our flight training. Now there's multiple different things in here that go into full detail, which is super, super cool. The good news guys is actually these are free resources, on the FAA's website. I'll show them here in a little bit on the FAA's website, and you also get the actual books. They're like $20 each, but these are great resources. And what I'm going to show you guys through these is I'm not going to like give you guys an actual ground lesson. I'm not even close to a position to do that, but what I'm going to do is show you guys things that stood out to me. And if you're ever wondering where to find something about aviation, these two books are great to find. So obviously the names suggest what they are. This is the Airplane Flying Handbook. This talks about the aircraft itself, how it works, that full detail and that sort of thing. And that's not to say that these books don't overlap, because trust me, they do in some regards, but they have their purpose, let's say that. The Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge is also an awesome book for, as it says, it's the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. If there's something that the pilot needs to know, this is usually the book where they go first. If they need to know something about the aircraft, this is kind of here. And again, some overlap, some they don't. But so we're going to be going into these chapters. And again, let me know if you guys like this format. If not, I may make their own separate videos too if we want to go more in depth. So if you guys like to see separate videos and keep the flying to itself, let me know. But I thought for this video it makes sense to do them together. So the first chapter we're going to be looking at is the first one I looked at after that initial chapter. It's going to be chapter 3 of the Airplane Flying Handbook. Really good book right here. It has a lot of details. So I'm going to be opening this up for you guys, and we're going to be taking it over to, or I'm just going to show you guys kind of the beginning of what all is in here. So Airplane Flying Handbook, you can pause to read at any time if you'd like to. But obviously, this goes into full detail about how the airplane flies in general. So the first chapter we looked at is chapter 3, Basic Flight Maneuvers. So this is going to take us into full detail about flight maneuvers, and I'm going to kind of walk you guys through that. And some things we already did are in chapter 3. So let's take a look at chapter 3. And again, plenty of chapters. These are awesome textbooks. I really like them. And any flight center usually will use these in most circumstances. I think colleges usually teach out of them, but let's kind of go into the details of what's here in the Airplane Flying Handbook. So obviously this is just simple basic flight maneuvers, and I'm going to kind of skim through this and kind of give you guys some details. So 4 fundamentals to flight. You have lift, drag, I'm sorry, wrong place, my bad. That's the next one. This is actually the 4 fundamentals for straight level flight, turns, climbs, and descents, and we'll be seeing this through the first couple chapters. Sorry, I got confused again. But again, if there's anything you'd like to see in general, you can pause to read. Of course, you have your yoke right here, throttle. If you have a propeller trim, it's right here. You have your mixture right here, rudder, yaw, and then this the trim for the stabilizers, pardon me. So this is kind of the use of the flight controls, and this is how you fly the airplane, of course, kind of like a car, of course. So of course you have 4 main components right here. You have the elevator, which is the lateral axis, the rudder, which is the vertical axis, and the aileron, which is the longitudinal axis. Now obviously these control different things. The yaw is your rudder, that makes you go left or right on the ground and also in the air as well. Your elevator is the lateral axis, and this is what is your pitch, which makes you go up and down. And your ailerons obviously are rolled to go left and right in flight. And also, in some circumstances, you'll need it on the ground. So again, this kind of shows you what to do with your pilot's hands, with the feet as well. Again, feel free to pause to read. I'm just kind of walking you guys through it because I know this isn't like the funnest thing, but I think it's pretty cool. So I thought I would walk you guys through it. Then you have the feel of the aircraft. This goes into full detail about, you know, how a pilot will feel for the aircraft. There are some examples in here and such. So if you ever need to kind of read through that, you can. Like I did, you can see some asterisks where I pointed out things that I thought were notable. And then this is obviously, you have different things, angle of attack, and then roll angle as well, bank angle, my bad, I'm sorry. So different things throughout here, how you go up and down, left and right. This is obviously pretty basic. And then this talks about how much you should look inside the cockpit to outside. This is something I honestly am trying to work on to the best of my ability. I'm trying to get this 90-10 ratio going. So this is, I think we're making progress there. But this is kind of a hard thing to get used to because I'll be honest, it's a lot. It's a lot to do this all at once. And you guys will see that as you guys may go into pilot training as well. Here's where we talk about straight and level flight. Of course, this is kind of, I love these graphs because it's just a simple, or pictures, graphs, you know, the things that the FAA shows in these books. This is obviously a straight and level flight right here with fixed horizons right here, and it shows a G1000 to a normal 6-pack cockpit. And we'll talk about that more in detail at a later time. And then we have our left and right here on how it's supposed to look. This is straight and level flight. We talked about it. Altitude's consistent, heading's consistent, turn coordinator's consistent. Airspeed usually, I mean, again, if you want any details, it's all right here. And I think it goes into the next page as well. This talks about level flight as well, kind of similar, but as you guys can see, it kind of goes into details about that as well. And then the FAA also goes through common errors, and you'll see a lot of these, and I've had some of them, but I've tried to fix them to the best of my ability. Not particularly with straight flight, but with other things that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Then we go into trim control. Of course, trim controls how the aircraft, the elevators can go fixed up or fixed down, which is very helpful, and it works really well. So obviously, trim's an awesome asset that you can utilize in the aircraft, and it's an essential one for multiple flight characteristics in general. And this kind of talks about that in general. Level turns, this is kind of what we're talking about with turns to headings. This talks about, you know, the 4 big things to look for right there. And of course, you know, there's a lot that goes into this as well, but this is kind of basic, so I'll let you guys kind of look through that. But the graph really shows really well what a turn to the left is at 20 degrees, it looks like. So yeah, kind of goes into good detail there, or it does go into great detail, my bad, but yes. And then again, this kind of shows what, there's some different things here when it talks about this steeply banked turn. You have your horizontal component, vertical component, total lift. And there's also different things my flight instructor will show me YouTube-wise, graph-wise, to kind of allude to these concepts as well. It's not just the book, and always use all your resources to the best of your ability, but number one, airplane flying handbook. This kind of talks about reduced lift, adverse yaw, which is a big factor of the aircraft as well. And then here's some, don't get a slid or a skid, a turn. You always want coordinated because we need to be coordinated to have good flight. So yes. Next page goes into the turn radius as well. You know, how bank angle and airspeed depict how far you turn, that sort of thing. Then there's always overbanking tendencies, establishing a turn as well. Correct posture is very important for this. Again, guys, I'm not trying to, you know, what's the best way to word this? I'm not trying to make this take too long, but I want to show you guys these things because it's very important. So that's kind of, I hope you guys are enjoying the pace. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts. This goes into much more detail about it as well. Again, feel free to read. And again, these are online as well. Link in the description. Airplane Flying Handbook and PHAK, which is the nickname for the pilot's handbook. Aeronautical knowledge, you'll hear me refer to as that. And here's some more common errors. This is climbs and turning climbs. So of course, there's different things like normal climbs, the best rated climb, best angle of climb. I guarantee you there's a figure right here. Yep. So this is the best rated climb right here. This is normally what everybody goes at. Best angle of climbs used for different things, especially if you had an obstacle right here, like a pole or something, for sure. And this is a really cool graph right here of the standard altitude to the indicated airspeed, pardon me. This is the service ceiling with the absolute ceiling. You're not going above that. And then they kind of meet up here as well. Here's establishing climbs. Again, this is a fairly simple topic. Your VSI obviously is going to increase in the power as well. Again, there's a bunch of details about how these work, so feel free, and we're about to watch a clip on this as well. I just thought I would cover this since this is when we learned about it. Climbing turns, this is exactly what we had on that clip that I showed you guys with the turn. That is exactly what a climbing turn is. That was it put into action. Descents and ascending turns, very similar concept right here. We'll also kind of see this as well. And we practiced constant airspeeds and descents is another way to put that. We obviously have partial power descents at a minimum safe altitude, and emergency descents. So these obviously go into detail about how it works. We are about to dive into emergency descents in real life and at this current time. Glides are a very complex topic. This is going to take some time for me to get used to, so I'm not an expert on it quite yet. But obviously you have increasing lift to drag ratio and increasing angle of attack that depicts what kind of glide is going to happen. Of course, if you're too slow, you're going to fall short. Too fast, you also fly short. Best glide speed is critical, especially for engine fails, and we'll talk about that more in the future as well. And then we have and much more detail about it here as well. Gliding turns obviously goes into detail as well about all that fun stuff. It talks about low-level gliding along with during a power-off landing approach as well. First and second, all that fun stuff. And that's the chapter right there. So again, this is all your basic flight maneuvers. Very, very good by the FAA right there. They did a great job. Unfortunately, that is not it for that. I know you guys probably want to get back to seeing flight stuff, but again, lots of this is predicted, and you'll see through a lot of this that a lot of ground comes into it first. I just want to make sure my camera's recording. It is. Pilot's Handbook, Aeronautical Knowledge, another phenomenal book. We're going to be looking at 2 chapters through this real quick. Or not real quick, but showing you guys what the details are. Chapter 3 and Chapter 6. My camera's good, just making sure both of them are because there's a lot. So again, this has the very similar table of contents. This is a 2016 rendition, it appears. Again, it goes into the acknowledgments and then table of contents, which is, we've read a lot out of this to start. That book, both books have a little bit of stuff that's not quite up yet for us. Principles of flights, of course, obviously coming up. Flight instruments we'll talk about in a little bit. Weight and balance we recently did, along with aircraft performance and airport operations. We did a little before that. We also did airspace recently too. And yes, so there's a lot to that. So obviously this is a great introduction chapter right here, but going into where we want, we're going to be starting with Chapter 3 and Chapter 6. Chapter 6 was about, to confirm, flight controls. Again, this is kind of like we talked about. This is a shorter one. Chapter 3, also shorter. This is the aircraft construction. So since we're kind of in the topic of how the aircraft flies right now, I'm going to leave the aircraft build here for a moment, and I'm going to start with 6 because this kind of will pertain to what we were just talking about. 5 is a super long one. The PHAK is very long. Okay, here's Chapter 6 about flight controls. Flight controls, and I didn't mark anything in this. I didn't have the PHAK at the time. So flight controls, this obviously goes into full detail about how they work. That includes yoke for pitch and roll, and obviously yaw for the rudders as well. So here we go. This obviously, like I said, has neutral graphs as well. This talks in detail, and this kind of laid out a little bit differently than the Airplane Flying Handbook. So this is talking about how the control systems work. Here's the elevator right here from the yoke. Here is the rudder the elevator, my bad, right here. Really nice on the hydromedical flight. Here's a helicopter system. That's a whole different can of worms, to say the least, but it is in here, of course. Here's another graph for the rudder, elevator, and ailerons right there, and this goes into full detail. And again, it kind of overlaps with this for the pilot to know, of course, like I was saying. We go into detail about adverse yaw here. This is a whole different can of worms as well. As you can see, adverse yaw comes over the propeller and increases drag and lift. Or you guys can kind of see what's going on here with that picture. This is a great graph of what adverse yaw goes into detail about. Then we go into detail about everything throughout here, about the ailerons deflected up and down and how it works when they're raised and lowered. Obviously, drag's a huge component of this. You can pause to read it any time. I won't keep saying that, but you guys are always welcome to. Here's the elevator right here and how that works. You'll also need rudder to deflect adverse yaw along with your turn coordinator, of course. Here's the rudder aileron. Here's kind of a graph of how that works. Very cool system. It's really cool. Here's a tailwheel aircraft right here that looks awesome. It's obviously different per plane. And then here's kind of how the center of gravity affects what's going on here with the elevator. So really cool right there. This goes in detail about T-tail aircraft, which is actually what the Tomahawk is. So this is a very critical chapter for me. And obviously for anybody that flies tailwheels, or I'm sorry, T-tails in general, Super 80. But center of gravity is obviously affected by that, and the higher angle of attack. Yes, there's a lot to that. Then we have details about stabilators. This is actually what the the Warrior has. And then this kind of goes into detail about how these systems work as well as one unit. Again, here we go over here. Actually, Tomahawks have stabilators too. My bad. I completely forgot about that. That is exactly right. My bad. So quite a few Pipers do. Then this goes into details like Beechcraft bonanzas and such. Again, there's different things to this. And then, of course, left rudder for the yaw and all that fun stuff. Here we go into detail about flaps. There's actually multiple types of flaps. You have plain flaps, split flaps, slotted flaps, Fowler flaps, and slotted flatter flaps. And then flick slot, multiple slot, leading edge, and leading edge cuff. Again, feel free to read if you want any details on these, but again, just different types of flaps that we go into detail about and such. Okay, I guess I ended up getting this one. There was one chapter where I ended up getting this as soon as I was reading it, so I guess I started right here. This goes into trim tabs and such. This is things you'll find more on airliners. That's just picture with the picked. And then it goes into detail here about the elevator trim and all that fun stuff once again. And it makes a huge difference on the airflow, as you can see right here, up and down and through. So looks really good. Stabilizer and the pivot point. This obviously talks about how it works more in detail in service tabs and all kinds of different tabs. The chapter ends talking about autopilot. We don't have autopilot in our aircraft, so it's kind of how it happens. And then it goes in, or the Warrior does, but inoperative. But yes, it does have it by definition, I suppose. But I haven't used it. It's kind of the point. And then this kind of goes into adjustable stabilizers and chapter summaries. So again, that pace I thought was pretty good, but that kind of goes into detail. And again, things that really stand out, I'll be sure to point out to you guys. So that's chapter 6. Now you guys are probably maybe wondering, how is all that possible because of the build of the aircraft? Well, that's what we're going to talk about next. Next chapter goes into aircraft construction, which is a huge part of how the aircraft works. Starting with this graph, which is a big one, you have 5 main components: the airplane, the power plant, also known as the engine right here, landing gears, this is how obviously it rolls on the ground, kind of like tires on a car, the wings, big part of flight, they have a huge impact, of course, the epinesions, which is the back portion of the aircraft, the tail and horizontal stabilizers, and then we have the fuselage right here, which we talked about that a lot in my model videos, so we've obviously seen that. Heading into full detail here we go. Aircraft design, certificate of airworthiness. This talks about the different types of aircraft, which you will find in the farm. All the principles of this, I'm going to get that for you guys, kind of show you guys an example of that. Here's the farm, which goes into detail about all of these. This is all the GA stuff, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Or I'm sorry, no, it's not. It has some different things to that. But obviously it has the different parts. There's 135, but obviously 135 is not us. And it goes into more detail. It has the different chapters. So there's 91, which is a big one in this realm. And then, of course, we have 61, which is kind of what we're in. So it goes into detail about that through there as well. Well, there goes the farm. My apologies about that. Okay, so this goes into details about light sports aircrafts, and then we dive completely into lift and basic aerodynamics. Of course, here's our 4 thrusts. This is what I was trying to get at. Thrust, drag, lift, and weight. These are 4 main components of the aircraft in general. Then we have, once again, guess who's back? You have your pitch, longitudinal, and yawing axis. I actually have a United 757 I'm going to demonstrate this with, because this is what my flight instructor did, and I thought it was very helpful. So what he did was he took his marker. I'll actually do it exactly how he did. So here it is right here. This is what he did, because he uses the dry erase board all the time, which is very helpful. And this is how it is. So you have the graph down here that kind of depicts it, so you can kind of show how it works, if you will. So you have, we'll start with the longitudinal axis for pitching. It's right here. I know it seems kind of weird, but this is legitimately how it works, up and down just like that. You have the rolling axis, which is to the left and right. It's from the yoke's perspective, if that makes sense. I should clarify that. And then you have the yawing axis, which goes directly through the plane, and that's how you turn it. And again, it's kind of a weird concept. It's one that's better verbally explained, if you will. But again, a really cool one in United 75. I'll actually put him off to the side because I may be using that. My flight instructor has a little Cessna aircraft that he uses, which is nice. This goes into the components that we were talking about. Here's some detail about the fuselage. There's some figures coming up. And then we have the wings as well. Again, huge components to the aircraft. Center of gravity is a huge topic of how the aircraft performs, and you guys will learn about this more in the future as well. Here is the airplane components down here as well. This kind of goes into detail about all that fun stuff. And then we have the bulkhead along with the ronjons in terms of how this is built right here for the fuselage structure, which is really cool. It's a bunch of fun to learn about in more detail. Here we go with detail about different types of planes. Of course, we have a monomodular plane, which is just a standard wing aircraft, just like this United 757. Then you got a bi-wing aircraft over here. You won't see as many of these nowadays, but still super cool. Here we go into wing detail. So let's actually pick apart this graph real quick. Fuel tanks are usually stored right here on most airplanes, so there it is. Wing flap right here, very critical asset. You guys know about flaps. Here's the aileron. Again, huge part. You always want these, obviously, in good condition. This is why we do pre-flight inspections. Then we have the skin of the aircraft, which we can see on the outside right here, the ribs of the aircraft, the main components of the wings, and then we have stringers as well holding it all together along with the wingtips. So really cool graph to break down right there. Very nice. Here we go with flaps once again. This is a similar talk to our previous one, but it just goes in detail about how it affects it. All right, here we go with the epinesions. Of course, we have the vertical stabilizer, the horizontal stabilizer, the rudder, trim tabs, and the elevator. This is how it fully works in detail, of course. We kind of already know this, but going into it, it's kind of funny. That's the FSX default aircraft, so it's kind of cool that that's in here with the weight shift control aircraft. And then we have different details about stabilizers and that fun stuff. So again, nice working unit. You guys may go into detail about it in the future. Here we go with the landing gear. Of course, there's different types of landing gear. We have water aircraft, we have ski aircraft, and of course, just normal landing gear right there, just wheels in general. And then it goes into detail about the power plant and how that works. There's a lot to the engine. We'll talk about that more in a future chapter about how the full components of that work. So I'm not going to dive too much into that because it's a whole different section of information. But of course, this is kind of just how it works. You have a cowling, you have a propeller, and an engine. Again, more detail to that. You have subcomponents of the airplane. This kind of goes into detail about all the subcomponents about the airframe, electrical system, flight controls, and brakes. And then we have the types of construction as well. You have a truss structure and a monocolonial with a semicolonial as well. These are how they're built. Pretty much the semicolonial has more to it in terms of different rivets and stuff. This is what our aircraft have. Monocolonials are also, I think they're on older aircraft, I believe. But yes, you'll see that through the book as well. Here we go into the history components. It talks about World War II with B-29 fuselage, which is really cool. Kind of talks in detail about that. Here's a composite Cirrus, it looks like. Advantages of composites as well, disadvantages. There's a lot to that. Some are good, some are bad. Here's a great graph right here that shows, okay, it's going to start breaking over time, then it does, and then boom, there it is. So you do not want this to happen whatsoever. Do pre-flight inspections and make sure that your cracks are okay. Most older aircraft do have some hairline cracks, but make sure it's not substantial in any way, shape, or form. On the outside, this is the inside, of course, but kind of going into detail about that. Here we have some protection as well, goes into detail about that. Thanks, FAA, we appreciate it. Then we go into some detail about future components, instrumental moving into the future. Here's the aircraft right here as well. Performance instruments. Here we have the different analogs, displays, control instruments, navigational instruments. And then here we go to GPS, which is a huge asset. We'll probably talk about that more in the future, especially through the instrument rating, I would assume. And then a chapter summary. So yes, guys, sorry that took so long, but there was a lot to that. I hope you guys enjoyed that. So let me know what you guys think about that format. That is not the only chapter we're going to be doing today. In fact, we have quite a few more. So I don't know if I'll end up breaking this into 2 videos. I might, depending on how long it is, but that is good there. So I also wanted to briefly talk about the checklist, and we'll see this more throughout actual full flights in episode 3, but checklist usage is also huge. We walk through each one of the factors, obviously make sure that it's on or correct or working, that sort of thing. And again, that'll be more implemented through flights. So that is for that right there. Alrighty, boys, so that's going to work us into our third flight, which is kind of going to go over what we just talked about. Obviously, we had straight level flights, turns to headings, and then we started doing climbs in the sense. So I'm going to show you guys that in its full detail. Alrighty, boys, so here's an awesome example of a climb right here, departing Stillwater right here. So as you can tell, working with the power and getting a good climb out, this had a best rated climb of 70 right here. Again, just simple. This is about 500 feet per minute. I think it varies just a little bit, but this is a climb. Of course, the book talked about it a little bit more in detail of how it works, but here it is in a full practice right here. So as you can tell, aircraft climbing, we do this all the time in flight simulators and stuff as aviation enthusiasts, so I'm sure you guys kind of get it. And again, very basic, but something that takes time to get the feel for, the logistics for it, that sort of thing. So everybody knows what's going on with that. And of course, you observing outside, checking the instruments, making sure you're still climbing, of course, getting that turn coordinator going, the VSI or vertical speed indicator. And again, just making sure the climb out's looking good. And that's kind of the basics of climb. And the next thing we did in that flight, the third flight once again, was descents. Now descents, very similar. Big thing also is the bring back power. Well, on climbs, I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, I kind of forgot to mention this. Full power usually in most circumstances for the practice of it. But as for the descent, you bring back the power and then descent. Usually at a negative 500 VSI. Again, sometimes it depends. There's obviously different circumstances. But here's that put into effect. Now, as you can tell, we already talked about it. I was going to bring it up in another flight, but I'll actually bring it up now. We also have constant airspeed descent. So this is a pretty darn good example, as you'll see, that as I'm holding a constant speed, as it looks like it's about 85 right there is what I'm bouncing between 80 and 85. You want to keep it consistent, so this wasn't absolutely perfect, but we were in the arrival sequence right here on this flight. So again, this is what a descent looks like. Not the absolute best one. Again, this is why we're training to improve and everything. So again, this goes into the full details of the descent right here. Not too bad. Again, I was pretty happy with it. I don't know what I was crossing my fingers about right there, but regardless though, into the descent right there, this is a pretty simple principle, but again, worked pretty well right there. So there we go with the descent. So in our fourth flight, this is the last one before we started bouncing around aircraft. This was in late December. What we did with our fourth flight was we actually went down the Wiley Post, which was really cool. But we did straight and level flight, turns to headings, and climbs and descents once again. And then we actually had a go around at Wiley Post. And I unfortunately didn't have the camera, of course. So what I did was replicate this through X-Plane so you guys can kind of see what happened. But I kind of told my flight instructor, I was like, it would be really cool if it worked and if it was possible if we could go to another airport. So that's what we did. We ended up going to Oklahoma City's Wiley Post. Again, this was a bunch of fun. I really enjoyed it. And on the way, it was a little windy, but we ended up doing climbs, descents, turns to headings, all that fun stuff. Getting those principles worked out and also getting that checklist usage going, because that checklist, man, that thing is a unit. You have to be on deck with that. So I'm going to show you guys this clip from X-Plane, kind of show you guys what was going on with not turns to headings, my bad. The go around at Wiley Post. So let's take a full in-depth look at this. Alrighty, so here we go in the Piper Warrior. This wasn't the best demo. I'm sorry, I just wanted to get this so you guys could see what was going on. So my flight instructor was doing a much better job landing what I was able to in the simulator right here. I should have did like a full startup and everything, but I didn't have time, so I just recorded the landing. But here's what it was. So we were on final for 17 left. The other two runways were closed, so this was a very congested situation right here. So obviously we got in, we got our squawks and everything. And what happened was, slightly past the touchdown mark, there was actually a Cessna hanging out right there. And I don't want to say he was swerving, but he was definitely moving on the runway for whatever reason. This is when we were starting to try to wonder what was going on, because I don't know what he was doing. We were so focused on flying the plane, I particularly forgot what happened. I think my flight instructor may have knew definitely more than what I did in that situation. But obviously coming in right here, it was looking really good. And then he was still down there on the runway, probably about that third taxiway down there, and he wasn't moving. So we were really wondering, like, okay, are we going to have to go around ourselves? Because normally ATC in that situation would tell us. So we got a little bit closer here, and then I would say it was probably about, again, this is replicated to the best of my ability. I think it's where the grass came up, or a little bit before that, as you can see this clip. The ATC told us to go around, pardon me, and that's exactly what we did. Unfortunately, due to time, we didn't get to come back in for another landing. We took it back up to Stillwater. But again, this was a very critical moment to show how important it is to pay attention, know what's going on, know your surroundings, be aware, because that could have been very bad in the wrong situation. So obviously went around, got the flaps coming up, and then we made a right turn out to 270. I think it was a little bit past what I have here. But yeah, it was crazy. That was my first go around. Kind of felt surreal, to be quite honest. It was really crazy. But yeah, first go around on that flight, and it was super cool. But that flight was really good. Really enjoyed it once again. It was really, really nice. So again, that was a bunch of fun. Really enjoyed that, and it was really, really good. So that takes us into our fifth flight. So here's what happened. So during spring break, or I'm sorry, not quite spring break. I'm excited for that. But during winter break for me, Christmas break, if you want to call it that, here's what happened. So here we go. During that, we had an unfortunate intermission between flight lessons. I think we went from late December to early January. It was about 2 weeks. Now, unfortunately, this is kind of something you'll find, especially in a bad weather area or just in big time conflicts with schedules and such. Sometimes flying a lot is really hard. It's really hard, and it happens. So here's kind of what the details of that were. So I think we had 5 cancellations in 5 days for trying to fly in that last week of December, the last week of 2021 in general. Multiple reasons went into that. First off, I think the aircraft had a flat tire one day, the Warrior did, so that was kind of one. Another reason was both of our schedules conflicted. I think that mine was fairly good. I think it just didn't work out multiple times. I don't remember canceling though. I think it was just on the other side of things. Along with that, I think that there was many other issues. I mean, I'm not going to pull up the text, but there was just issues. So unfortunately, we were able to fly. Luckily though, in the meantime, one thing that's very critical is I got my first class medical, which is super cool. So what you do is you actually go to an online website and fill out, or at least this is how I did. I think you can do it in real life too. But we filled out the papers and got all the details in. It's a pretty pretty similar to the ICA RA. There's quite a bit to that, but once you fill it out, you're gonna be good to go. We went to a local place in Stillwater, local doctor to have the first class medical done. And everything went well, passed, got it done, was super happy with that. And yeah, I got my first class medical. I think it was $125, but the good news is valid for 60 months or 5 years. So I'm good for a while. So that's a bunch of fun. But yeah, the rate of how many times you'll have to have your medical done depends on what type of pilot you are. I'm pretty sure if you're a flight instructor, it's much more often. I think it's like either every 6 months or a year. Don't quote me, it's somewhere in the book, but it's very often. And then I even think for commercial pilots, it's very often because obviously they're aircraft transport aircraft. I think it's something along those lines. They transport passengers, so it's a lot more often. I think probably for cargo pilots as well. So got the first class medical done, which was nice, and again, was super glad to get that done so we would be ready and fit for flight. So got that done, was super happy, and with that, that took us into a lesson on slow flight and stalls. And then we have, during that 2 weeks, we had quite a few chapters that we did. So I'm going to show you guys that. It is quite a bit, so bear with me, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get into the full details of that. Alrighty guys, so as I was kind of mentioning, I've been filming for a while. This is filmed after I filmed absolutely everything. So this will do it for episode 2. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry that was kind of an abrupt ending. But in episode 3, we'll be picking up with everything that we were going into. That's going to include multiple chapters from the PHAK, which will take us into some more flights. And then we'll have a little bit more actual readings, which I apologize there was a ton of reading. But that was because there was so many days off in there. There was another 3-week intermission when I had COVID, and then weather also got us down here. So unfortunately, kind of messed us up, but that'll take us into episode 3. Again, a lot of good stuff in there. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. I'm sorry, but episode 4 is going to be awesome here in a couple weeks. I really hope you guys are excited for it. We'll be doing full walkthroughs through those flights, and it's going to be absolutely awesome. I really hope you guys are excited for it to go into full details about that. So yeah, guys, again, thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm so excited for what's to come. So with all that being said, everybody, I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. My name is Redriveraviation. I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching. Take it easy, everybody. Stay safe. Trust the process. Do what you love and love what you do. My name is Redriveraviation. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon as Redriveraviation is signing off.